You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1082. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I hope you are doing amazing. We just wrapped up Level Up Week, and this week and next week we are doing our Level Up series, where we are interviewing people about a variety of ways that they've leveled up and gone beyond their private practice, beyond different areas. So last week we talked about the busy brain cure. We had USA Today bestselling author Dr. Romy, and then we also had Body Image in Your Kids. We had Amy Morin, who has a TEDx talk that got 24 million views. And then we just talked with Jan yesterday about treating trauma and addiction with polyvagal theory and how that works. So doing a lot of really awesome things. If you have not leveled up yet into one of our membership communities, this is the time. This week and next, our membership communities are open. So if you're in solo practice, next level practice is going to be where you want to level up into. Group practice launch is for people who have full solo practices and are adding a clinician to their practice. And group practice boss, that is going to be for you if you already own a group practice. You can read all about those over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up. So pretty exciting week we've had of webinars and of learning together. Our level up weeks are always really exciting to do and to have a lot of different people that we hung out with this week. I am so excited for our guest today. Michelle Puster is with us, and Michelle helps parents trapped in anger to free themselves from overwhelming shame and regain their balance and inner calm. As a mom of 3 and a therapist, she shares her personal experiences from the trenches of parenting burnout and how she uses mindfulness, meditation, and self-compassion to find inner calm and a little more sanity in parenting. Michelle, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Hi, Joe. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. We have been covering a lot of different areas, and actually, when I was interviewing, who was it? It was Amy Morin. Was talking with her, and then also with Dr. Charlotte just a few days ago about kind of parenting stuff and body shame and mental strongness. It's interesting how sometimes all these guests have things that are in common, even when we didn't perfectly plan it that way. So excited to have you on the show talking about anger today.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So when did you realize that you needed to focus on your own anger in parenting?
Well, Joe, I might get a little emotional if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I also forgot
Absolutely.
to ask you is this an explicit podcast? Because sometimes I curse when I get emotional
You
too,
can
but
say, I think it's great you're saying that at the front end, and you can say whatever you want. And so listeners, just know that if you are listening to this while your kids are in the car, there may be some things that are said that maybe you don't want your kids to hear. So we've warned them now, Michelle. Be free.
All right. Thank you. Okay. That's easier. So, yeah, I guess when my kids were, I have twins that are 10 now and an 8-year-old. And when they were about from the ages of, I don't know, let's say 4 and 2 and to like 6 and 4, I was really struggling, and I was in like total parent and work burnout, but it mostly came out negatively, sadly, with my family. And it would come out because I didn't have emotional regulation. And so the smallest thing seemingly that they would do would just push me over the edge. And I would yell, and then I would feel all kinds of shame because I was a therapist and I was thinking about, how is this affecting them? And this is traumatic. And so, and also I felt like a lot of shame because I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I yelling? Why am I not emotionally regulated? Like, I just could not understand what was happening to me and why. So it was a very dark time in my life.
Hmm. I'm sorry you went through that. I mean, and I think that it's what you're pointing to is also something that so many of us therapists like deal with too. Like when we lose our cool, it's like I taught parenting classes before I had kids, and it's like, oh, we learn all these theories, and then it's like, the reality of it often is much different than what we were taught. So, what helped
Mm-hmm.
you? Like, I guess first, when did you recognize there was a problem?
It was mostly like there's this really like sad moment when I mean, I was thinking there was a problem for like I was crying every day on the way to work. I was really down. Um and like I said, just emotionally dysregulated more often than not, it felt like. But I remember coming home and my little teeny daughter, she was so sweet. She was like 3 or 4, and she just wanted to like come up on the couch and snuggle with me. And I was so emotionally dysregulated and so stressed out and overwhelmed that I remember like recoiling. Like I just couldn't handle her needing me. And it was so painful. Like that was painful. And the yelling and not being able to calmly be responsive was painful to the point where I um, reached out for a parenting coach. Like that's when things really started to turn around and turn a corner. Um, and I think I'm kind of grateful that things did get as bad as they did, because on the flip side of it, things have changed and I have emotional regulation that I didn't have even before kids. It just wasn't as, it's like anxiety and depression was something that I had since I can remember. It just wasn't like magnified to the same degree as when I had children who needed me and needed an emotionally regulated parent. Then it became like, you know, in my face where I couldn't get away from it.
Yeah, I think that kids have a way of putting things in your face that maybe you've ignored a little bit. Now,
Yeah.
what did that parenting coach help you with, and what did that change look like?
Well, it was a hand in hand parenting coach. I don't know if you're familiar, but the main thing that I got out of it was she would say like, well, of course you're struggling. You have 3 kids under the age of 5, you have twins, and of course you're struggling. You're, seeing 30 people a week, and it makes sense. And I always believed that it was a personal failure. Like I really believed I should be able to do it all. I didn't know that what I thought was reasonable was really impossible. I thought I was failing as a parent. I thought if I can't, find emotional regulation, then I'm failing. I thought I just needed to, do more running or I don't know, like I just needed to try harder. And I didn't realize that my situation was pretty impossible. And the fact that I felt shame on top of it just put me in this hole of depression that then made everything worse, right? Like my kids were experiencing this dysregulated mom, and I was depressed. And then when something would happen, I would feel bad. And it was just like this vicious spiral. So for her to say again and again and again, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just under resourced. That's what she would call it. You're under
Mm,
resourced. And I was
I,
like,
I love. I
oh.
just want to pause there. That under resourced. I feel like we should like highlight it and like almost like you can double click into what that means. Where there'd be a whole list of like under resourced, like not having enough emotional, like social, like whatever, all the stuff of like early parenthood. I love that
Hmm.
term. So how did that term under resourced like resonate with you? Like what did that kind of trigger in regards to what you needed to actually do to help change your situation?
Well, I started realizing that it was too much. Like, thankfully, I had an EFT supervisor that was like, maybe could you see less people? Is that possible? And she gently would be, and listening to you, that was, I don't know, however many years ago, saying like maybe you could
Mm,
charge more and see fewer people.
mm-hmm.
And what my expectations were just totally unrealistic. And so eventually, it took years, but eventually I slowly saw fewer clients. I realized that I was totally isolated and it wasn't my fault or a personal failure, that I needed support, I needed friends, I needed so I like slowly climbed my way out of this hole of parent depression and burnout, and it took a lot of time, but it slowly and surely it happened with a lot of support too. Like I went from one parent coach, then I went to another parent coach, and I found a listening partner, which is like a parent that's trying to parent the same way as you. I took like parenting courses where it was like supportive, not so much instructional, but supportive. So I just like tried to start to surround myself with support. And that's what I needed. Like I needed to not be alone.
Mm. Yeah, I know that like as you talk about kind of trying to do it all and realizing that you can't, like what comes to mind for me is, 3 years ago when I was coming back from our road trip where we lived in national parks during COVID and left as a family of four and came back as a family of three, where my ex chose to stay in California. And coming back and, going through that divorce and having, sole physical custody in a lot of ways. I mean, they see her, I'm like 85%, of the time, just
Mm-hmm.
like realizing how much during that first 2 years or so, probably actually until only just like 6 months ago, how much I like needed the house to be clean and be like catalog worthy. And it's like, I'm okay. I can get through this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
strong. I can be a single dad. I can kick ass. And it's like, I don't need to ask my parents for help. And, I was asking my parents for help and I was asking my sister who lives in my neighborhood, for help, but it was like reluctantly. And then, it really was a conversation with my partner Claire, where she said, "We want to help you. Like, stop trying to do all this yourself." And I think sometimes there's that,
Mm-hmm.
just like I'm a firstborn, I'm a like Enneagram 3, I'm like all the things that set me up for being an achiever. But then it's like, but people want to help. And I like when I have friends going through stuff, I want to help, and I want to be able to
Mm-hmm.
show up for them. And so I think that just that realization of you don't have to be as fiercely independent as either you were taught to be through your childhood or you somehow bought into that narrative or however it formed. um, for you, when you think about the narratives that you had to challenge in your brain, what did you have to challenge that helped you become a better parent and a better human?
Well, I love that you said catalog worthy because that was a big source of shame when I would be, freaking out in the morning and, struggling to get my kids dressed and in car seats and just feeling like a, total failure when I'm dropping my kids off at preschool. And I would always look over and there would be like this parent dressed to the nines and looking amazing and their kids looked amazing. And I always would feel like, why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? And in my house, I thought I should be able to have like this Pottery Barn looking house. I thought I really went into parenting with these crazy expectations that like it was going to be like the catalog version of Halloween and Christmas, and like that's not what it's like at all. So I felt all this shame around, and when I would lose it I would be like, so and so would never lose it. In my mind they were like Mother Teresa kind of parent, and I was the only one who was struggling and failing. And so like I had to eventually, and I listened to like a lot of Pema Chodron's talks and read Tara Brach's books, and
Mm-hmm.
like hearing over and over again that other people had these same thoughts and feelings and beliefs and about themselves. And I would do the RAIN practice, recognize, accept, investigate, nurture, or Kristen Neff's self-compassion break, where she would say, "You're not alone," the common humanity. And at first I kind of had to have faith. Like I would tell, it was like mouthing something that I didn't truly believe. But over time, I would, I started to believe like, oh, other parents struggle. It's not like this false narrative in my head is not true. It's not true that I'm the only one. It's not true that I'm failing. It's not true that everybody else has it all together and I'm the only one who's like losing it. Like that is just not true. So I would be very specific and I would say, it's normal to lose it. It's normal to have a hard time. Parenting is hard. And then I would say, probably someone else on my street is struggling to get their kids to get their shoes on right now as well. Like this
Mm.
is a normal, common human experience. And I had to repeat that to myself over and over again because the narrative was, I'm failing. I fell into deep shame. And then it would be so hard to climb out of that shame. It was hard to parent. It was hard to function. So that part, that compassionate part of I'm not alone, I'm truly not alone. This is not a Michelle experience. This is a human experience. It countered the shame that kept me in a hole.
Mm. Do you often find yourself overwhelmed by the influx of client calls you receive? Receptionists are expensive, but you can't afford to let your patients go to voicemail. You care for your clients, so you try to phone them back, but more often than not, it's too late. They've gone to another practice. When you partner with Well Received, you capture every opportunity. Your calls are answered by professional medical receptionists 24/7, and they can support you with more than just message taking. They offer new patient intake, after-hours service, bilingual services, medical appointment scheduling, medical live chat, and so much more. All this at a fraction of the cost of an in-house receptionist. Your patients are Well Received's priority. As a Practice of the Practice listener, you can get an exclusive 50% off your first 2 months of service. Head on over to wellreceived.com/Joe to start growing your practice today. If we fast forward to now, what does your parenting look like? How is it different? How do you incorporate those things that you learned when you were kind of in the thick of it? Like, what does that look like now to have a healthier version of parenting?
Well, I have continued the parenting coach support. So I'm part of like a very small parenting group coaching call every other week. I talk to my listening partner once a week. I have friends that I talk to now that I like see and spend time with. I prioritize like taking care of myself, which for me is running and yoga. I also meditate. So I feel like I have to do all of these things, to put your oxygen mask on first. These things are all, if I have to keep doing them all and know that when times are harder, I need to double down. So I have to, like, these are all things I have to just keep doing. And I also judged myself a lot for even, like, why do I have to have a parenting coach and this and that? Like, what's wrong with me that I need all this support? And now I don't know, maybe everybody needs this much support. Maybe it's because I have ADHD. Maybe it's because I'm a highly sensitive person, but it doesn't matter. Now I'm just like, okay, this is what I personally need. I need a lot of support. I need lots of different kinds of support. And that is imperative for how I show up. So then, like, my kids just started back to school. And they, had a hard time with it, as kids do. It's gotten easier every year, but there were some rocky moments, right? And so now when my, son is yelling at me and wanting more screen time, I and one, I struggle to maybe be gentle and soft. Maybe I just have to listen. I don't go into a shame spiral anymore, right? Because I'm like, okay, the meditation helps me be able to zoom out and see, like, this is situational. This is not going to last forever. This is because school is starting and he is struggling and it's kind of the video games are a hook. Okay, I can handle this. If I can't, be perfect in my response, it's okay. I'm tired too. It'll get easier. Like, there's this knowing that it's situational and it will pass. And I can talk to my listening partner about it on Tuesday. I can bring it to my group coaching call, my parenting call, so I don't have to do it alone, which is
Mm-hmm.
a huge relief.
Yeah, I think for me also just realizing that I don't have to do it all and that if I do have the means to do it, my sanity is worth it to like actually right now while we're talking, my cleaning person, Katie, who has been with us for years, is cleaning the house. And it's like I like to have a clean house. It makes
Mm-hmm.
everyone feel calm and there is no way I could like do that level of cleaning on a regular basis and not be giving something else up. I'd rather spend that at my daughter's volleyball game or spend that, meditating or something like that. So for me, figuring out like where can I spend my money just to make my life easier? Like years ago, I realized I hate mowing the lawn. And the neighbor kid
Mm-hmm.
loves making $20. And it's like for
Mm-hmm.
$20 or like, the shape of my driveway in Michigan winter is so weird for snow blowing. It's not just like a straight down and back. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
you do it in this weird way. And it's like I can pay $35 for this guy to just come, plow the driveway. And I can then spend that, playing a board game with my kids. And so I think sometimes there's this hustle narrative that we inherit. Like my
Mm-hmm.
parents, like, they were raised by people that went through the Great Depression. And so they still, as boomers, have a lot of that, like save every dollar, penny saved is a penny earned. And that's not untrue, but also that doesn't mean in every area that we need to say like, I need to do everything. I need to fix my car just to save $100 on the brakes and probably do it poorly, like,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think for me, figuring out like where do I want to spend my time and starting with like, how do I not just be reactionary to my kids, but they're 9 and 13 now. But even a couple of years ago, to say like, what do intentionally we want to have, like say the weekend look like, or this coming, when at the beginning of the summer we sat down with the whiteboard and kind of made a list of like what are things we want. We want to go to the beach a couple times. We want to make sure that we go stand up paddle boarding and just
Mm-hmm.
starting to say like, how do we not just react to life, but actually impact it and to say, okay, yeah, it's a busy season coming up. Like right now, I haven't got my daughter's volleyball schedule for the fall, but by the time this podcast is live, I'll be in the thick of it. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
4 days a week of like, carting her out to the middle school, coordinating with other parents. Like it's already happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just realizing certain parts are chapters. And then I love that you're doing, the meditation and, that time, that downtime to me is gonna make us all just better parents. For me, it's watercolor painting. It's like I took up watercolors a couple years ago. I love that you have this idea for a painting, but when it dries, like the water is
Mm-hmm.
also sort of like an actor with you in it. So finding
Mm-hmm.
those things to me are so important to have that kind of internal side. Are there practical things externally? So we covered a lot of kind of like keeping yourself grounded and meditation, things like that, support, so that inside you're feeling solid. Are there external ways like techniques you've learned that just help you or your kids be less reactionary, have less anger, like to be clear in your parenting that have really helped you just be a better parent?
Well, I guess what comes to my mind is how I coped when I do feel triggered. So I think they're two part. Like the positive part, like you said, the proactive part is trying to keep and maintain good relationships with them. So I try to be like, when I wake my son up, I get his little bunnies and I'm like, oh, the bunny wants to go to school with you. And I nuzzle his neck and, and try to be playful, which is not easy for me. It doesn't come naturally. I talk about this in my parenting group. Like, I want to chase my kids around the kitchen spontaneously or something like that. Like, I have to keep trying and working at it, because otherwise I'll just not be playful at all. But I try to be playful, and I try to spend intentional time with them. Like, I love my one daughter. We take walks, we walk the dog together. And so that helps our relationship. Or when we, go to bed at night, we sit and snuggle with each one of them. And I take turns doing that with my partner. And so those are all ways that I try to be proactive. And then the other part is being aware of when I need a break. Like, I am gonna get triggered by stuff. And so I take a lot of breaks. The other day, I had two kids over. After they left, I was making dinner, and I just felt this kind of flood of overwhelm. So I removed myself to the laundry room. I sat on the floor and I went through the rain practice. I recognize I'm overwhelmed. Allow. Okay, welcome to the party. That's Jeff Warren's phrase. Welcome to the party, overwhelm. You're such a familiar friend. And then I changed it up to interconnected, kind of to address that common humanity. It's normal to feel overwhelmed in parenting. It's normal to feel overwhelmed with a couple of kids over and a loud house and trying to make dinner. It's the third week of school. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. And then the need, what do I need right now? Maybe I need a break. Maybe I need to vent to my friend on the phone. Maybe I need to ask my kids for help. Maybe I need to stay in the laundry room a bit longer. And then I can come back to, whatever it is, in this case, finishing dinner. And I feel a little bit more balanced, a little bit more grounded. I can take a breath, and it helps to just slow down those moments that would otherwise, would have in the past pushed me over the edge, because I would have just kept trying. I would have just kept pushing and just tried harder, which never got me anywhere.
Hmm. Do you think that sometimes for our generation of parents that there's a unhealthy or unrealistic expectation to not get angry? Because I feel like when I think about my parents or I think about my grandparents, like I saw them get angry, and there was times that sure, it was probably unhealthy or wasn't what was best, but there was other times where it was like, yeah, I was being a little punk, and maybe they let themselves go. And it's like I do feel like sometimes there's this like we have to keep it all together that could almost lead to like our kids then having such conflict avoidance because they didn't see appropriate anger come out. I guess that's my real question. Like, where do you feel like there's anger that's appropriate to come out, and where do you think there's anger that's more like inappropriate to come out?
Well, yeah, I mean, anger is just an emotion. So I agree. There's nothing wrong with feeling angry. And I will repeat that to myself over and over again when I'm frustrated, because I think you're right. It's that kind of ignorance is bliss. Like, we have the opposite. We're overeducated, and at least for me, I get hyper aware of, oh my gosh, am I doing this? And am I right? Like, is it too much? Am I too, whatever? So, I think we're going to get angry. So I have to repeat to myself, it's normal to get angry. It's okay to be angry. What crosses the line is if I yell at them, or if I, and even yes, we all yell, but there was a very distinct difference when I felt like this rage monster inside of me. Like, I felt out of control, and it felt so bad for me and scary that it was beyond just oh, come on, get your shoes on. But to that point, yes, I would get upset with myself, even for being short with them, or, edgy. And I have to remind myself, I'm human. Of course I'm going to get short and edgy sometimes. But if I really cross a line that, for myself, where I yell at them, or I'm mean, or I'm, I don't know, just, yeah, then I will apologize. Now I feel like my kids are really good at apologizing because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I had to apologize a lot for overstepping a line. Like, I'm sorry, I was mean to you a moment ago, or to give myself time to cool off. Maybe it was longer than a moment, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and
Does
I
that
think that's,
answer
I
your
think that whole,
question?
yeah, I think that whole rupture and repair like cycle of that, I want my kids to know that they can try new things, they can screw up, they're all learning. This is the first time that my daughter's been 13 and my other daughter's been 9, and there's different hormones coming out. And like, there's
Mm-hmm.
times that they like scream at me, and to then say, like, okay, like that doesn't feel good. And to kind of walk through that process and say, what's your body telling you? Like, it's not a punishment, but like maybe you just need to go to your room and like chill the fuck out. So it's like so I think finding that balance, and it's my first time being a single parent of a 13 and 9-year-old too, and so trying my best to
Mm-hmm.
be gentle with myself, to say like, yeah, you don't always know what you're doing either. And so sometimes I think as professionals we feel that pressure like more than others, because it's like we should have our stuff together in a way that we maybe don't. um, the last question I have for you, Michelle, is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would say if you're interested in doing something outside of your private practice, why not me? And I got that from Denise Duffield Thomas, and I think it's really helpful. Like there's so many fears that we face in stepping out of our private practice and doing something different, but it's helpful to think about, like, why not me? Why is it always someone else? Like, why not me? So I feel like that's a really helpful thing to remember. um, we all have special gifts, we all have unique things that we can share, and so if you're interested in sharing, why not you?
So awesome. If people want to follow your work, if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing, where should we send them?
I would like you to go to Compassionate Heart Mindful Life, and there I share, I have a podcast where I'll share my parenting stories, and you can get a rage break, which is kind of like what I use and what I've taught parents to use when they're triggered and need to pause and regroup and then come back. Um, yeah, so come visit me at Compassionate Heart Mindful Life.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Well, if you are a parent or if you work with parents, I hope that was helpful for you and that you have some things you can implement. It's really interesting. My daughter turned 13 earlier in the year, and there was a moment we were in an airport back in July, and she's sitting there eating her yogurt and her fruit, and she's reading Percy Jackson, and I'm reading a book, and there's all these other parents chasing their kids around. And it was like, I realized that it felt like, when kids are babies, they crawl and it takes a while, and then they start standing up a little bit, and then they start to slowly walk, and it's like very slow moving growth. But I feel like 13, at least for my daughter, was like a cliff, where it just went from her being a little tween to like being like a little woman that just understands the world better, is asking to help, and, still has her 13-year-old stuff. But that cliff just has been such a shift that I'm learning to walk through. And so I don't know if there's like a point that I'm going to land on from that, but I just think that for all of you that are in the thick of it, at least in my experience, and that's all I can really speak to, there is hope ahead of you. And, there's also just like a weird morning that I didn't expect. Maybe it's not weird. Of just like, oh my gosh, like, a lot of things are shifting really quickly. Like, she's going into 8th grade, and like, we've got like 5 school years left. So it feels like it's speeding up in a lot of ways. That is exciting and is also different. So take that how you will. We couldn't do this show without our amazing sponsors. That's why we do this 5 to 7 days a week now. Well Received is such an awesome place to help you out. If you want someone to answer your phones 24/7, they help with new client intakes, after-hour services, bilingual services. They do all live chat, and at a fraction of the cost of an in-house receptionist. You can get 50% off your first 3 months if you head on over to wellreceived.com/Joe. Again, that's wellreceived, and that's with a D at the end. So WELRECEIVED.com/Joe to grow your practice today. It's time to get a virtual assistant and, move past you doing all this stuff. So check out Well Received. Use that promo code so they know that their sponsor is working. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.